Welcome to Exploring Judaism's podcast, Holiday Bites. We are talking about the high holidays, and I'm talking to my friend and my colleague, Rabbi Adir Yolkut. Grateful to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Well, let's begin. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure. So, as Jeremy said, I am Adir Yolkut. I currently work as a rabbi in White Plains, New York at Temple Israel Center. I've been in the pulpit for around 7 years now, both in the synagogue world, but also doing some work in Jewish education. I'm a native St. Louisan, currently in exile in the East Coast, where I've been for the past number of years. I am married to my lovely bride named Lauren. We have a son named Cal. We also are parents to a canine son named Louie. And when I'm not rabbiing, excuse me, I love to cook. I am a huge sports fan. Both I love to play sports and watch sports. And I've recently become a CrossFit coach, and I'm a big believer in the joining of physical wellness and spiritual wellness as well.
Starting a month before Rosh Hashanah and all the way through the end of Sukkot, a period of about 50 or so days, is a time of introspection, the month of Elul and the high holidays. What does this season mean to you as a rabbi and as a friend, as a family member? What does it mean?
I think about it from multiple approaches. I think as a rabbi, it feels very much part of the work that I'm doing. So, there's an aspect of the preparation for the holidays where I'm really thinking of myself as a sort of conduit for, in this case, my congregation, but perhaps in other contexts, the people with whom I am in community. And that means sort of what am I preparing to be able to enrich people's lives spiritually? What text am I going to teach? What divrei Torah am I going to give? What kind of conversations I'm going to have. So that's sort of one side. And I think the other side, personally, where I find my richest preparation comes in thinking about the concept of tshuva. Like in what ways am I actively participating in trying to sort of recalibrate myself to reach my highest levels, to sort of get back to the core of who I am after a year of maybe slogging through and falling backwards. How can I kind of elevate myself? And that's that's the kind of work I'm trying to do in the month, if not more, leading up to the holidays.
One of the major themes of this period is salicha, which is generally translated as forgiveness. How would you translate that word and share a bit about what forgiveness means to you?
I think forgiveness is a fair sort of one-word description of slicha, but to differentiate it, because I think there's sort of two words that we can think about in Judaism when it comes to acts of forgiveness. There's mechila, which is probably something more akin to pardoning someone, not necessarily legal sense, but sort of in thinking about our interpersonal relationships. Not as maybe emotionally driven, whereas slicha I actually think has a little bit more of an emotional valence. And I think about it as kind of a letting go of stuff. And so whether that is directed towards oneself, because I think there's an aspect of slicha that is self-directed, because there's plenty of things that I do that I really need to learn how to forgive myself for and let go of that thing, but also towards others. I admittedly am a person who can hold grudges towards people. And so I think what slicha sort of asks us to do and pushes us even to be a little bit uncomfortable is how can I forgive someone? And even if maybe they're not responding in the way that I want them to, if I have said, you've offended me or you've caused me harm, in what way can I just sort of like let that go, let that slough off me? Because the more I carry it around, the less prepared I'm going to be for the season of these holidays.
Tell us about one activity or process you might recommend to someone who wants to engage with spiritual preparation during Elul before Rosh Hashanah.
I find the shofar to be a really beautiful mechanism to really prepare for the high holidays. I think when you get to a point during Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur where you've heard it a number of times, you almost become inured to it a little bit. But I think the idea that we blow it every day provides a really interesting opportunity to kind of reflect on the noise. Like I find it very um, jarring in a positive way when I first start to hear the shofar at the beginning of the month of Elul. And so I think whether or not you're a seasoned meditator or you find meditation quite challenging, to the extent that you're able to hear the shofar, like actually sit with it and hear its notes and maybe try to see in which way you can identify whether it's the clean tekiah or it's a broken shvarim or an even more broken trua, or even a tekiah gedolah if you're getting into that kind of thing. I think the shofar can sort of transport us in a way that other rituals in Judaism don't, because of the sound aspect of it and what it can sort of do to break open our hearts. So that for me has been really meaningful this year, and I offer it as well to others.
The two big holidays during this period, the ones that many people are coming to synagogue for, are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What is the essential message of these holidays to you? How are they similar? How are they different?
I find them to be totally different. Maybe I'm an outlier in that way, even though obviously they're grouped together as sort of the Yamim Norim. Rosh Hashanah for me, I don't often connect with it as sort of this coronation of God, but where I do think Rosh Hashanah stands is it's a holiday of your own birth. The world is reborn, and I think each of us has the opportunity to sort of be reborn into the world, into our lives, into our communities, so long as we're like doing the work beforehand. I don't think you can be reborn unless you're actively taking part in that process. And Yom Kippur is the other end for me. Yom Kippur is a holiday of rehearsing our deaths. We don't eat. Traditionally, we don't drink. We don't partake in sexual activity. We wear white, or some people wear the traditional white shroud, which many people are buried in. And so I think it's sort of a dress rehearsal, as it were, right? Like think about what are you doing in your life? And if this were your last Yom Kippur, have you done the things that you want to do? Are you acting in the way? Are you speaking in the right way? Are you, with people? Are you in a community that you want to be? Will you be remembered in the ways that you want to be remembered ultimately? So you have birth to start, and then you get to death 10 days later, and you got to figure a whole lot out in between.
During this season, starting with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, through Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, somebody is likely to spend a lot of time sitting in synagogue. What advice might you have for someone who is sitting in services and not feeling connected in that moment?
Two things. One, maybe as you can see from me in this video, I'm a mover and a shaker. Like it's hard for me to sit for long periods of time, which is challenging as a rabbi because I tend to either stand for long periods or sit for long periods. So I would tell people to move around if they're in a synagogue, to like change their space up, walk to the back of the room, go take breaks, come back in and out, sit in different seats. And the other is to bring books. One of the things I really miss being in the pulpit is I used to just come with like a whole bag full of books, some of them Jewish, some of them connected to the holiday season, some of them not Jewish, not at all connected. And I just find like my brain works well, and I think many people work well when we can be in and out, to give us a chance to like really focus before we get burnt out, take a step back, and then come back in with a little bit more sort of passion and intention. So I really recommend book bringing to Shul.
At the end of the high holiday season are the holidays of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. The main themes of these holidays are joy and celebration. The tradition calls them Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. What does simcha, joy, mean to you, and how can we, or how might we, carry that joy throughout the whole year?
I love the sort of tail end of the holidays, the ones you're talking about, Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. And I think this has changed for me in my life. I think most recently my son was born during Sukkot last year, so this is going to be my first sort of set of holidays. So I think obviously I'm always going to be brought back to that place of becoming a parent during it. But I think one of the things Sukkot and its related days are meant to do is sort of push us to live in the temporary. We move out of our homes. We eat our meals in a sukkah. Some people sleep in a sukkah. I'm not much of a camper, so that's not so great for me. But the sort of idea of like I live in the concrete. I live in the that which lasts forever during the year. And on Sukkot, I remind myself that like I kind of have to relinquish control a little bit, and that for me has been joyous. That's a revelation I've had about myself, that I have struggled in the past with letting go of control. And I think Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah is just sort of this joyous unburdening of this need I constantly have to be in control of everything. And it kickstarts the rest of my year, because after that I'm out of the holidays and I'm into the chol, I'm into the regular, and trying to take that aspect of I'm throwing my hands up because I'm simply a human being. That feels very joyous to me as I think about this upcoming holiday season.
If you were to have the opportunity to share a singular message, one lesson that you wish people knew about the season or any of these particular holidays, what do you wish that they would know?
Something that's on my mind, a text I just learned, is that tshuva, the sort of phrase that I opened with, is it's for every person. It is for the sort of regular, middle of the path person. It is certainly for the person who feels as if they are on the lowest rungs, like they have done the worst things. They feel the poorest about themselves. Like tshuva is operative for them. And even for the person who feels most righteous, I hope there's not many of us who think we are like at the highest levels of spiritual elevation and ethical and moral elevation. But chuvas for those people too. Like we all have work to do and room to grow. And so I think if we can really get into that headspace leading up to thy holidays, they can be that much more enriching if we are in the headspace properly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time and for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.